1982 was truly a wonderful year. It was the year that I graduated from high school, and at long last, I was finally free from the rigors of education, free to live my life as I pleased, at least until fall rolled around, and then I would be attending a local technical college. However, I must admit I was pleasantly surprised to discover that none of my professors that fall really seemed to care if I attended their classes or not. Maybe I was truly free after all. The downside to that discovery was that my grades were absolutely horrible during that first year of college life. So bad, in fact, that I decided I probably needed to take a break. A very long break. I wouldn't tackle college again in earnest for about 5 years. And that's okay, because there was so darn much going on in 1982. It was the year that I first really became aware of visionaries like Steve Jobs and John DeLorean. Of course, Steve's project seemed to have a little more success than John's. But nevertheless, fast forward 3 years or so, and DeLorean's dream car would become part of one of Hollywood's biggest movies of the decade, Back to the Future. And video games? Well, they were everywhere. I had my favorite, more on that in just a little bit. In the world of sports, the San Francisco 49ers, with Joe Montana leading the team, won the Super Bowl. It was in 1982 that the Niners would become my favorite NFL team and would continue to be so for the better part of the next 2 decades. They were just a ton of fun to watch. Also worth noting that my little home state of Utah gained a bit of notoriety for the University of Utah medical team that successfully implanted the world's first artificial heart. Dr. Barney Clark would live a few extra months due to that team's noble efforts. Much less noble was the sick and twisted individual who tainted packages of Tylenol that ended up killing a bunch of people. I don't remember whether or not they ever caught someone, but holy cow, that was so sad. Such a tragedy. But you know what? We're not here to talk about science or medicine. Heck no, we're here to talk about music, movies, and television, so let's do exactly that. When I think about the one thing in the world of entertainment during 1982 that really stood above all else, it's this guy, Michael Jackson. Sure, Thriller wasn't released until November of that year, but the album was just so massive, and the cool thing is that Michael seemed so normal, in an extraordinary way, of course, and there's no denying the man's talent. Later on, he would go a little bit off the rails, in my opinion, but this album was a testament to the genius of Michael Jackson, to his innate ability to make hits. Songs like Billie Jean, Beat It, and the title track, Thriller, folks, they are really good stuff. And all of those songs had awesome videos that played night and day on MTV. Seriously, for a while there, it felt like MTV stood for Michael TV. During those final few months of my senior year in early 1982, I would skip school and swing by my favorite restaurant. A little fast food joint called Rennie's that had the most amazing burgers, and their fresh banana shake was absolutely killer. Anyway, I'd swing by, grab some grub, and hang out in the basement of my home watching MTV. As long as I could. I could do that for hours at a time. Music videos still felt new, and it was such an exciting time to see what my favorite musicians would come up with next. In order to pay for all those burgers and cable TV, my parents didn't want it, so I offered to pay half of the bill. Well, I needed a job, so I found employment at a local pizzeria named Robintino's. And although that restaurant has moved around the corner and down the street a bit, it's still around to this very day. I have some really good memories about working there, probably because most of my friends worked there as well. But I'm getting off track. Let's talk a little bit more about music. In 1982, I was really into the stuff that was coming over from England. Bands like Duran Duran, The Clash, and ABC were some of my favorites. And I loved the Boomtown Rats. You know, that band that sang about not liking Mondays? Sadly, I must admit that their 1982 album, V-Deep, is my least favorite of all of their releases. I remember reading a review about that album where the critic said that it was so lightweight that it felt like it might float right off the turntable. Fortunately, the band would rebound a few years later with their next release, In the Long Grass. Now, let me state for the record that I know that Olivia Newton-John's physical album came out in 1981, but it was in 1982 that the album was really just playing everywhere. It was still flying high on the charts, and Olivia was absolutely, positively the queen of pop music at the time. During my final year of high school, it seemed like every girl in my senior class had a hairdo like Olivia's, complete with a headband. Whatever the damage done by the box office flop that was Xanadu, well, it had been completely forgotten by the time that Physical was released. Sadly, that would be the last album of Olivia's to really hit it big. Sure, she had a few more minor hits, but nothing like the chart toppers of the past. Okay, before we go any further, let's pause for a brief commercial message from, well, one of my favorite candy bars during the early 80s. Heck, what am I saying? It's still one of my favorite candy bars.
Chocolate.
Peanut butter.
Hey!
Oh, hey, you got your chocolate on my peanut
You got
butter.
peanut butter on my chocolate.
What?
What? Delicious.
Two great tastes that taste great together. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Real milk chocolate, delicious peanut butter.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
And Reese's Crunchy Peanut Butter Cups topped with chopped peanuts.
Switching over to movies, the average price of admission in 1982 was $2.75. In today's dollars, that would be about $8. Whatever the cost, if I could, I would have gone to see a movie every single night. The cinema truly was my happy place, and there weren't many movies that I didn't like. In 1982, well, that was a banner year. Just think about it. We had films like E.T., Blade Runner, and The Thing that expanded my imagination. Eddie and Nick made me laugh in 48 Hours, and I think Diner may have been the first movie that I saw Steve Guttenberg in, or Mickey Rourke for that matter. But in my opinion, the hands-down best movie of 1982 was Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Oh my goodness, Ricardo Montalban just chewed up that movie. He was so good, every bit William Shatner's equal when it came to commanding the attention of a movie-going audience. To this day, Wrath of Khan is still my favorite of all of the Star Trek films. Over on the small screen, shows like Dynasty, Three's Company, The A-Team, and MASH ruled the day. Yeah, I know. I see that 60 Minutes in Dallas are at the top of the ratings chart there, but I didn't watch either of those shows back then, did you? One show that I did watch, however, was Cheers. I've always been a sucker for shows like this, where you're rooting for the two leads to realize that they were meant to be together. Both Shelley Long and Ted Danson were phenomenal. But beyond the leads, the entire cast was really good. It would take a couple of years for audiences to find Cheers. In fact, it was almost canceled at one point. But cooler heads prevailed, and now Cheers is remembered as one of the best TV sitcoms ever. A couple more shows that debuted in 1982 that I really enjoyed were Knight Rider, starring the great David Hasselhoff, and Remington Steele, which, at least to my knowledge, was the first time I saw Pierce Brosnan on TV, or on any screen for that matter. Also debuting in 1982 was Late Night with David Letterman. Thank heavens after graduating from high school I didn't have to get up early anymore, because I'm not sure that I could have. Letterman was can't-miss TV for me, and we were still a few years away from owning a VCR in the Sundstrom home, so if I wanted to watch Dave, I had to stay up. You couldn't watch a show whenever you wanted. That was crazy talk way back then. My, how things have changed. In 1982, the average cost of a new home was $82,000. Average income per year was $21,000. Average monthly rent was $320, and a new car would cost you about $8,000. And the cost of a gallon of gas was 91 cents. The cost of a home computer in 1982 was $299, at least if you wanted to pony up the cash for a brand spanking new Commodore VIC-20.
Why buy just a video game from Atari or Intellivision? Invest in the wonder computer of the 1980s for under $300, the Commodore VIC-20. Unlike games, it has a real computer keyboard. With the Commodore VIC-20, the whole family can learn computing at home. Plays great games, too. Under $300, the wonder computer of the 1980s, the Commodore VIC-20.
Coming soon, Commodore brings you Gorf, the Wonder arcade game, and Omega Race in home versions. Commodore.
This would be the first computer that I owned, although I recall picking it up for slightly less than that price. Whatever I paid, I figured I was going to be saving money because I could quit spending all of my cash, at least my quarters, at the local arcade on this game. I appreciated Gorf because it was 4 games in one. As weird as it sounds to say, I felt like I was saving money when I played Gorf because each level was a different game. Of course, once I got my very own VIC-20, I was saving even more money. Yep, hours and hours of fun with nary a quarter spent. Alright, we're probably getting to the point where I ought to be thinking about wrapping things up, but before I do, I can't believe that I almost didn't mention Tron. This revolutionary movie, coming from the fine folks at Disney, was another favorite of mine. Alright, now it's your turn. Please share your thoughts and memories from 1982 in the comments section. And while you're at it, I would appreciate a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I would be absolutely honored if you would consider subscribing to my little YouTube channel. I talk about music, movies, and mostly television from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.